Hello Americans channel. This video is made by free videos from Storyblocks, and these images and video we use just for explanation, and it's free use also.
At his mother's funeral, this 3-year-old's final words changed everything. As the community came together to say their final goodbyes, young Tommy clutched his mother's hand one last time, his sorrow so raw it moved many to tears. But when he leaned in to whisper his farewell, a heavy silence fell over the room, and an unsettling feeling gripped the mourners. His haunting words sending chills down their spines and bringing the entire funeral to an abrupt and dramatic stop. As the undertaker brought the service to a sudden halt, puzzled and anxious glances rippled through the crowd. Whispers spread quickly as mourners searched each other's faces for answers, unsure of what had triggered the unexpected pause. Some clutched their programs with trembling hands, others shifted uneasily in their seats, the silence pressing heavily around them as all eyes turned to the front where little Tommy stood, the center of a mystery that had unsettled them all. Tommy's aunt Sarah stepped forward with a face etched in confusion and urgency, her voice trembling as she asked, "What did you say, Tommy?" The air was thick with tension, the room frozen as every gaze turned to the boy who now held the weight of revelation. Her hands quivered slightly as she reached out to him, and the crowd leaned in, hearts pounding, waiting for the words that might explain the chilling moment that had brought everything to a standstill. The funeral director paused, uncertainty flickering across his face before he gave a subtle nod, signaling an unscheduled break in the service. Clearing his throat, he turned to address the uneasy crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice steady but laced with hesitation, "please bear with us for a moment." The room stirred once more as murmurs spread among the mourners, tension rising with each passing second. All around, people exchanged uneasy glances, whispering theories and questions, trying to make sense of the strange and somber disruption at Tommy's mother's funeral. Tommy's father, visibly rattled, gently pulled his son aside, kneeling to meet him eye to eye. "Tommy, what did you mean when you said Mama isn't ready?" he asked, his voice trembling despite his efforts to stay calm. Tommy's tear-filled eyes stared back, full of innocence and sorrow. The unexpected interruption, sparked by his own child, sent a wave of confusion, fear, and a growing sense of dread crashing over him, leaving him reeling in the face of something he couldn't yet understand. Tommy, his tiny body trembling, pointed to the casket and whispered, "Mama said she's not ready." The words struck his father like a bolt of ice, leaving him stunned and nearly speechless. Desperately, he scanned the room for a logical explanation, but nothing made sense. Tommy clung tightly to his sleeve, his fear mingling with a haunting certainty that made the moment all the more chilling. Around them, the soft hum of murmurs grew as the mourners struggled to comprehend the unsettling weight of the boy's declaration. As whispers rippled through the room, a woman stood quietly near the back, cradling a baby in her arms. She rocked the child gently, her expression calm but unreadable, eyes drifting now and then toward the casket. Her composed presence, amid the growing tension, caught the attention of several mourners who exchanged puzzled looks. The baby's innocent face, soft and unaware, stood in striking contrast to the heavy air of grief and confusion, drawing eyes away from Tommy's haunting words to the enigmatic woman holding her child. Driven by a growing sense of curiosity and unease, Sarah stepped toward the woman, her eyes flicking between the baby's familiar features and the mother's calm, distant gaze. "Excuse me," she whispered gently, careful not to disturb the delicate atmosphere. "How are you connected to Tommy's mother?" The woman hesitated, her eyes briefly settling on the casket before meeting Sarah's. A tense silence hung between them as Sarah's heart pounded, instinctively sensing that this woman and the child in her arms were somehow entwined in the mystery unraveling before them. As Sarah and the woman exchanged hushed words, the baby suddenly reached out toward the casket, creating a moment that was both tender and eerily unsettling. The child's tiny fingers stretched as if trying to touch something invisible, drawing the eyes of nearby mourners and deepening the sense of unease. A cold shiver ran down Sarah's spine as she watched, unable to shake the feeling that something otherworldly was at play. The woman looked briefly shaken but quickly regained her composure, holding the baby close. Around them, the room fell into a tense silence as if everyone were collectively holding their breath, waiting for the mystery to unravel further. Tommy watched the interaction intently, a flicker of recognition in his eyes that did not go unnoticed by his father. Confusion deepening, his father turned to him and asked softly, "Tommy, do you know them?" Tommy gave a small, almost hesitant nod but said nothing. Just then, the woman looked over and met Tommy's gaze, a brief moment of silent acknowledgement passing between them. The exchange, though wordless, sent a ripple through the room, deepening the mystery and leaving everyone questioning who this woman and child were and what unseen ties connected them to the grieving boy. Conversations quietly swirled throughout the room as attendees exchanged hushed speculations about the mysterious woman's identity. Whispers filled the air as people tried to make sense of her connection to Tommy and his late mother. Some guessed she might be a distant relative, while others leaned toward the idea of an old family friend resurfacing at just the right or wrong moment. The uncertainty fed a growing tension, each theory adding to the unease that hung over the gathering like a thick, unspoken fog. As the tension escalated, murmurs of family secrets and hidden ties began to ripple through the mourners. Guests exchanged wary glances, their conversations reduced to careful whispers laced with speculation. The atmosphere grew increasingly stifled, thick with unspoken questions and silent judgments. Who could she be? Why does the baby look so much like Tommy? The room buzzed with quiet conjecture, and what had begun as a solemn farewell slowly morphed into a swirl of whispered conspiracy theories, each guest more eager than the last to unearth the truth lurking beneath the surface. Sensing the weight of the moment and the growing unease, the funeral director chose to take Tommy's word seriously, calling for a brief intermission. Stepping to the front, his face marked by both concern and resolve, he addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, we will pause the service for a moment," he announced calmly. A wave of murmurs swept through the room as attendees tried to process the unexpected turn of events. Some nodded in quiet support, sensing something deeper at play, while others exchanged bewildered looks, clearly questioning the decision and what it might reveal. As guests stepped outside, the cool air offered little relief from the swirl of confusion and curiosity. Clusters formed quickly, each group engaged in animated conversation, voices hushed but urgent. "What's going on in there?" one guest asked anxiously, glancing back toward the building. Meanwhile, inside, the immediate family gathered in a quiet room, their expressions a blend of concern and resolve. Huddled closely, they exchanged tense whispers, grappling with Tommy's haunting words and the presence of the mysterious woman, uncertain of what to believe, yet knowing something needed to be uncovered before the service could continue. Tommy's father, Sarah, and the mysterious woman stood close, locked in a tight circle of confusion and urgency, each trying to make sense of the boy's chilling words and the woman's unexpected appearance. With his voice trembling, Tommy's father finally asked, "Who exactly are you?" The woman clutched the baby protectively, inhaling deeply as if steadying herself for what she was about to reveal. Sarah, trying to keep the peace, looked between them and gently pressed, "Please, we need to understand why you're here." The room felt charged with anticipation, every second stretching painfully as they waited for the woman to speak. The woman paused, clearly struggling with the weight of her words before finally speaking. "I was with her," she whispered, her voice fragile but unmistakably sincere. The confession struck like a thunderclap, silencing the room in an instant. Eyes widened and hearts pounded as the gravity of her admission sank in. She looked down at the baby in her arms, avoiding the piercing stares now fixed on her. Tommy's father stepped forward, his voice tight with emotion. "Why didn't we know about this?" he asked, a mixture of anger and disbelief in his tone. The air thickened with uncertainty as the layers of the mystery grew heavier, leaving them all teetering on the edge of an unsettling truth. Her revelation sent a ripple of bewilderment through the room, stirring more questions than answers. "What did they talk about?" Sarah asked, her voice edged with urgency. The woman hesitated, her gaze distant, before quietly replying. She said there were things she needed to set right. Tommy's father's brow furrowed, confusion etched across his face. "Set right? What could she mean by that?" he asked, more to himself than anyone else. The woman looked up at him then, her eyes swimming with sorrow, but behind the grief lingered something else, something unspoken, shadowed, and just out of reach. Realizing the weight of Tommy's words couldn't be dismissed, they agreed to pause the ceremony until they uncovered the truth. "We can't just ignore this," Sarah said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. Tommy's father gave a slow, solemn nod. "All right, let's find out what she meant." The woman shifted uneasily but met their eyes with quiet resolve. "I'll help as much as I can," she murmured. Though none of them knew what they would find, they all understood one thing with certainty: the funeral couldn't continue until they uncovered the meaning behind Tommy's chilling message. "Mama said she's not ready." Sarah suggested they contact the hospital where Tommy's mother had last received care, hoping it might reveal something they had missed. "Maybe they have some information we don't," she offered, her tone steady but urgent. Tommy's father nodded, already pulling out his phone. "It's worth a try." The woman, still holding the baby close, added quietly, "I'll share everything I know." As the plan began to form, a shared sense of purpose settled over them. Despite the emotional weight and growing complexity of the situation, they were united by a single goal: uncover the truth behind Tommy's haunting claim before saying their final goodbyes. In the foyer, the guests grew increasingly restless, their quiet murmurs filled with speculation and uncertainty. "Do you think they'll ever resume the service?" someone asked, their voice edged with anxiety. Another replied with a shrug, "It's hard to say. This is highly unusual." The atmosphere was thick with tension, a blend of impatience, confusion, and morbid curiosity. As minutes stretched on, the weight of the unknown pressed heavier on the mourners, each person silently yearning for clarity or at least a glimpse of resolution to the unsettling events that had disrupted the day of farewell. Meanwhile, Sarah stepped aside to call the hospital, her voice tight with urgency as she relayed the unsettling events and Tommy's mysterious words. "We need any information you have," she pleaded, barely masking the desperation in her tone. The staff assured her they would investigate right away, but the promise did little to ease the tension. Each passing second stretched unbearably, the weight of uncertainty bearing down on everyone. When Sarah finally hung up, her face reflected the anxiety simmering beneath the surface. She rejoined the group in silence, the unanswered questions pressing heavier than ever. As they anxiously awaited a response from the hospital, Tommy's voice pierced the tense silence once again. "She's not ready." "I know it," he said with unwavering certainty. The adults exchanged troubled glances, struggling to make sense of his conviction. Despite their best efforts to reassure him, Tommy's calm yet insistent tone made it impossible to dismiss his words as mere grief or confusion. His quiet certainty added yet another layer of weight to an already overwhelming situation, leaving everyone more unsettled than before. The already somber atmosphere thickened with rising tension as more family members began to sense that something wasn't right. Uneasy whispers circled the room, each conversation laced with suspicion and doubt. Could Tommy be right? Someone murmured, the question hanging in the air like a shadow. Every quiet comment only fueled the growing uncertainty. In the corner, the mysterious woman remained silent, her baby now sleeping peacefully in her arms, a calm presence that somehow only deepened the mystery surrounding her and the unresolved truths lingering just beneath the surface. All eyes turned to the funeral director, the room thick with anticipation as the pressure to provide direction mounted. He cleared his throat, visibly uneasy under the weight of so many expectant gazes. "We must proceed carefully," he began, his voice measured but strained, scanning the room as if searching for guidance himself. The air was taut with unspoken questions, each mourner silently hoping for clarity or resolution. As the director paused to collect his thoughts, the tension only deepened, the uncertainty pressing down on everyone like a storm yet to break. With growing desperation, Tommy's father reached for his phone and dialed a close family friend who had spent time with Tommy's mother in her final days. His hand trembled slightly as he tapped in the number, the weight of uncertainty pressing heavily on him. "Hello, Mark. We need your help," he said, his voice taut with urgency. On the other end, Mark immediately recognized the distress and assured him, "I'll be there whatever you need." As he hung up, a flicker of hope stirred in Tommy's father's chest. Perhaps at last they were one step closer to uncovering the truth. Mark's voice crackled through the phone, steady but uncertain. "There was nothing unusual, but there was this woman," he said slowly. "She came by a few times. Seemed like someone your wife knew, but I never got her name." His words hung in the air like a ticking clock, each second amplifying their weight. Tommy's father felt a chill creep up his spine as he lowered the phone, his gaze instinctively drifting toward the silent woman holding the sleeping baby. Could it be her? He wondered, the realization tightening in his chest as the pieces of the mystery began to align, though not yet clearly enough to understand. The weight of Mark's revelation pushed Sarah to press for answers. She stepped toward the woman with careful determination, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "Who are you, really?" she asked, keeping her tone calm, though the question carried the weight of everyone's growing suspicions. The woman's eyes shifted to the sleeping baby in her arms as if searching for strength in the child's serenity. Her hesitation was unmistakable, and the room seemed to tighten around her, every mourner leaning in, bracing for whatever truth or secret her next words might reveal. The woman finally spoke, her voice soft and barely audible. "I was her caretaker," she confessed, eyes lowered as the weight of her words settled over the room. A heavy silence followed as mourners struggled to process this unexpected revelation. "Why didn't she tell us?" Sarah asked aloud, voicing the question that lingered in everyone's mind. The woman looked up briefly, her expression tinged with sadness. "She didn't want to worry anyone," she explained. The confession deepened the emotional current in the room, blending their grief with a growing curiosity about the hidden chapters of Tommy's mother's final days. However, when the conversation shifted to the baby, the woman's guarded demeanor returned, stirring fresh unease among those gathered. "And the baby?" Sarah asked, her voice edged with suspicion. The woman looked down, her eyes fixed on the sleeping child, carefully avoiding anyone's gaze. "He's important," she murmured, offering no further explanation. The vague response landed heavily in the room, igniting another wave of tension. Guests exchanged uneasy glances, their patience thinning with each cryptic answer. The silence that followed was thick with frustration and growing distrust, as every unanswered question deepened the sense that something vital was still being withheld. Mark entered the funeral home with brisk steps, his eyes immediately scanning the tense faces and hushed conversations. "What's going on?" he asked, clearly sensing the weight of the moment. Tommy's father quickly pulled him aside, quietly explaining everything that had unfolded. The mysterious woman, Tommy's chilling words, and the unanswered questions surrounding the baby. As Mark listened, his expression shifted from confusion to deep concern. The gravity of the situation settled on him, but his steady presence brought a subtle sense of reassurance. Though the mystery had only grown, his arrival signaled a united front. Whatever this was, they would face it together. Returning to the main room, Tommy walked slowly toward the casket, his small hand wrapped tightly around Sarah's. The quiet grip spoke volumes, a child seeking comfort amid confusion and grief. The crowd fell into a hushed silence, eyes fixed on the solemn pair as they made their way forward. Tommy's father followed a few steps behind, his face a mixture of concern and apprehension, unsure what his son might reveal next. Each of Tommy's deliberate steps carried a weight far greater than his age, and the room held its collective breath, suspended in anticipation of what was to come. Tommy rose onto his toes, leaning gently over the casket as he whispered softly to his mother. Sarah and his father leaned in, straining to catch even a fragment of his words, their hearts pounding with anticipation. The room was utterly still, the quiet murmuring of a child commanding more attention than any speech could. Though no one else could hear what he said, the weight of the moment settled over everyone like a shroud. Tommy's earnest whisper seemed to echo with something deeper, an invisible thread of connection that stirred emotion in every heart present, even if the meaning remained just out of reach. Just as the room sat suspended in silence, Sarah's phone buzzed, an incoming call from the hospital. She stepped aside to answer, her expression quickly shifting as she listened. Her face grew pale and her hand trembled slightly as she turned back to the group. She mentioned a letter, Sarah said, her voice barely steady. The words hit like a thunderclap, sending a fresh wave of shock through the already fragile atmosphere. Tommy's father looked sharply at Sarah, then to the mysterious woman, his mind racing. Whatever was in that letter suddenly felt like the key to everything, the answers they needed, and perhaps truths none of them were prepared to face. According to Sarah's notes, the letter was said to contain vital information meant to be uncovered only after her passing, information she described as crucial. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the weight of her words, the mystery surrounding the letter casting a sense of urgency over the group. With firm resolve, Tommy's father declared, "We need to find it," and just like that, the entire focus shifted as everyone prepared to search for answers. The search for the letter quickly became the top priority, prompting the family to make the bold decision to temporarily pause the funeral. "We can't proceed without knowing what's in this letter," Tommy's father insisted, his conviction leaving no room for argument. As word spread to the guests, a wave of confusion and disbelief swept through the crowd, turning the once somber ceremony into an atmosphere of tense anticipation, with everyone uncertain about what would happen next or how long the delay would last. Although the decision was ultimately agreed upon, it left many guests feeling frustrated and confused. "Why stop now?" someone whispered, echoing the unease in the room. As eyes darted around in search of answers or a swift resolution, the unexpected pause unsettled the atmosphere, putting everyone on edge. Some guests grew visibly impatient, while others maintained a quiet respect for the family's choice. Still, the tension lingered, with all attention now fixed on the mysterious letter and the secrets it might hold. The family threw themselves into the search, scouring the house from top to bottom. Tommy's father, Sarah, and even the mysterious woman spread out, methodically checking every room. "It has to be here somewhere," Sarah said with determination as they rifled through drawers, sifted through stacks of papers, and inspected hidden corners. What was once a familiar and comforting home now felt like a maze of secrets, each shadow a possible hiding place, each passing moment adding to the urgency. They tore through drawers, cupboards, and personal belongings with growing desperation, each movement more frantic than the last. Every drawer was yanked open with anxious hope, only to end in disappointment, and each cupboard revealed nothing but frustration. "Check the study again," someone urged before rushing off, while Sarah flipped through old photo albums and Tommy's father dug through his late wife's jewelry box. The faster they searched, the more intense the atmosphere became, their urgency feeding a rising tension as the need to find the letter became all-consuming. Meanwhile, the mourners were informed of the delay, and most chose to wait out of respect. "We understand," one guest said politely, though the curiosity in their eyes was unmistakable. Gathered in a side room, they quietly exchanged theories and speculations, their voices low and glances cautious. Despite the disruption, there was a general consensus that discovering the truth behind the letter was more important. Their shared patience lingered in the atmosphere, each passing minute without an update, deepening the collective tension. As time dragged on, Tommy grew increasingly anxious, his small frame tight with worry. "It's taking too long," he murmured, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on him. Sensing his unease, Sarah paused and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "We will find it, Tommy," she assured him, though the worry in her eyes hinted at her own doubts. The pressure was palpable, each second slipping by a stark reminder of the letter's importance. Everyone's focus intensified, driven by the sense that whatever the letter contained could change everything. Sarah finally uncovered an envelope marked to be opened only after her death, tucked behind a stack of old greeting cards in a long-forgotten drawer. Her hands shook as she retrieved it, the sight of it seeming to validate all of Tommy's troubling claims. Turning to Tommy's father, she held it up, and the mood in the room instantly changed. Everyone could sense just how significant this discovery truly was. Inside the envelope was a letter hinting at significant undisclosed assets or long-buried secrets. Sarah's hands trembled as she unfolded it, her eyes racing across the page. This could explain everything, she whispered, the words striking like keys turning in a long locked door, each line revealing a piece of the puzzle. Tommy's father stepped forward, his expression caught between hope and dread, bracing for whatever truth the letter held. With the letter in hand, the family huddled close once more, the room falling into a heavy silence as Sarah prepared to read its contents. All eyes were fixed on the fragile paper, each person straining to catch every word. Tommy stood beside his father, wide-eyed with anticipation, while the mysterious woman held her baby a little tighter, her face unreadable. The atmosphere was dense with suspense, everyone bracing for the truths that were about to unfold. Sarah began to read aloud, unveiling a shocking collaboration between Tommy's mother and the woman with the baby. "This letter details something truly unexpected," she said, her voice calm but firm. As the contents unfolded, gasps echoed through the room. The letter revealed a deep hidden connection between the two women, hinting at secrets long buried and still untold. Each line drew the mourners further into a tangled web of intrigue, leaving them stunned and searching for answers. The letter revealed an affair and the birth of a second child, truths that had been hidden from Tommy's father. A wave of whispers rippled through the room as the shock settled over the mourners. "An affair?" Tommy's father echoed, his voice breaking under the weight of the revelation. Sarah's eyes brimmed with sorrow as she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "And a child," she added. The revelation struck like a tidal wave, sweeping away any remaining doubt and leaving only the undeniable gravity of the truth behind. With tensions at a breaking point, Tommy's father turned to the woman, his voice trembling as he demanded, "Is this true?" She nodded slowly, eyes brimming with tears. "Yes, it's true," she whispered. Her quiet confession sent a shockwave through the room, emotions erupting in a whirlwind of betrayal, anger, and disbelief. In that moment, the once distant words on the page became painfully real, transforming long-hidden secrets into undeniable truths. The letter transformed the room's grief into a storm of anger, confusion, and betrayal. Mourners stood frozen in uneasy silence, struggling to process the bombshell. Some exchanged bewildered glances, others whispered urgently, trying to make sense of the revelations. Tommy's father staggered backward, visibly shaken by the weight of it all, while Tommy clutched his hand tightly, his white eyes reflecting fear and uncertainty. The unexpected truth had shattered the fragile balance of emotions, leaving everyone reeling. Tommy's father sat in stunned silence, struggling to absorb the staggering revelations, while the woman broke down in tears, clutching the child and whispering, "I'm sorry." The room, once filled with quiet mourning, now buzzed with a heavy mix of tension and confusion. He kept his gaze fixed on the floor, lost in thought as his mind raced. Sarah gently placed a hand on his shoulder, offering wordless comfort amid the emotional storm. The atmosphere was nearly suffocating, each person overwhelmed by the crushing weight of the truths now laid bare. The woman's confession unveiled deeper secrets tied to Tommy's mother's final wishes. She wanted to make things right, the woman said through tears. She felt she had unfinished business. This revelation sparked a fresh wave of whispers among the mourners. Her words hinted that Tommy's mother had carried heavy burdens of secrets and regrets, and with every new detail, more questions surfaced, deepening the mystery surrounding her last days. She confessed that Tommy's mother had often expressed unease about her approaching death, sensing unfinished business left behind. Looking at Tommy's father with eyes heavy with guilt and sorrow, the woman whispered, she knew something was wrong. This confirmation only deepened the growing suspicion that Tommy's mother's death was far from simple. The family understood now that they would have to delve even further to uncover the full truth. Tommy's father trembled with a storm of emotions, torn between grief for his wife and a growing sense of mistrust. Holding the letter tightly, he glanced at the woman with the baby, struggling to reconcile the cherished memories of his wife with the painful secrets now revealed. The brutal truth of the affair and the existence of another child shattered him, leaving him engulfed in anguish and doubt as whispered conversations filled the tense room. The child was revealed to be Tommy's half-sibling, introducing yet another layer to the already tangled family dynamics. Mourners exchanged uneasy glances, whispering about the far-reaching implications, while Tommy's father stared silently at the baby, coming to terms with this undeniable proof of his wife's hidden past. The revelation struck a heavy blow not only to him, but to everyone struggling to unravel the complex web of secrets. One thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same again. As the chaos unfolded, Tommy's urgent insistence on not burying his mother took on new significance. His father looked at him, a blend of confusion and hope flickering in his eyes. "Tommy, did she say anything else?" he asked gently. Tommy nodded, his gaze steady and knowing. The weight behind his plea made everyone stop and reconsider. It was no longer just a child's wish, but a crucial piece in unraveling the growing mystery surrounding his mother's death. The funeral director found himself facing an unprecedented situation once more, standing at the front as he struggled to manage the escalating drama while honoring the grieving family's wishes. "If we need to stop, we must respect the family's decisions," he addressed the murmuring crowd, his calm demeanor masking his own uncertainty and concern. What had begun as a solemn farewell had transformed into a complex mystery, requiring a careful balance between paying tribute to the deceased and uncovering the truth. By evening, the family gathered once more, this time focusing on Tommy's words, the hidden letter, and the revelation of his newfound sibling. Rising above the anxious whispers, Sarah urged, "We need to piece all of this together." The room pulsed with tension as everyone struggled to connect the fragmented clues, each detail feeling like a vital key that might finally unlock the truth behind Tommy's mother's final wishes. Doubts about the true cause of the mother's death stirred deep suspicion, prompting the family to consider the possibility of foul play. Tommy's father paced anxiously, his face a turbulent mix of emotions. "Could someone have caused all this?" he asked, his voice shaking. The mysterious woman nodded slowly, her eyes heavy with regret. Every discussion seemed to return to the same unsettling conclusion. Something about her death didn't add up. The room grew heavier with tension as they wrestled with the grim possibility of intentional harm. Determined to uncover the truth, the family agreed to contact the police and request an official investigation into the mother's mysterious death. Sarah pulled out her phone, her hand steady despite the weight of the decision. "We need help to figure this out," she said firmly. Tommy's father nodded in agreement, his face caught between fear and hope. As Sarah dialed, a quiet sense of resolve settled over the room, their shared commitment to seeking answers, momentarily eclipsing the sorrow that had brought them all together. When the police arrived, they carefully reviewed Tommy's statements alongside the recent revelations. One officer knelt beside Tommy, speaking in a calm but serious tone. "Tommy, can you tell us more about what Mama said?" he asked. Tommy, steady and sure, repeated his belief that she wasn't ready to go. His quiet conviction struck a chord. The officers exchanged knowing glances, recognizing the gravity of his words. With notepads in hand, they began documenting everything, aware that they were stepping into a deeply tangled and possibly hidden family mystery. As formalities took hold, the morning gave way to procedure, with forensic experts arriving to re-examine the scene. The living room, once filled with shared memories, now echoed with the sterile precision of an unfolding investigation. "We'll need access to all medical records and recent correspondence," an officer told Tommy's father. He nodded silently, absorbing the shift from intimate sorrow to a determined search for answers. The weight of both grief and investigation settled over everyone, marking a profound and uneasy turning point. What began as a personal mourning had now transformed into a full-scale investigation under the watchful eyes of everyone present. Guests whispered quietly, their faces reflecting a mix of sympathy and intrigue. "This is turning into something bigger than we thought," one mourner murmured. The forensic team moved with quiet precision, their clinical presence a jarring contrast to the earlier solemnity. The family stood close together, eyes fixed on every movement, clinging to the hope that each step would bring them closer to unraveling the mystery behind Tommy's mother's final cryptic messages. As the investigation progressed, Tommy quietly recalled another chilling detail. His mother had whispered something about being poisoned. "Mama mentioned something about being poisoned," he said softly, his small voice cutting through the tense silence. The room froze. Tommy's father's eyes widened, his thoughts spiraling as the weight of those words sank in. The revelation sent a fresh jolt through the already charged atmosphere, introducing a new and urgent layer to the mystery, one that demanded immediate and serious attention from everyone involved. The authorities took Tommy's revelation seriously, immediately initiating a deeper investigation into his mother's medical history and recent interactions. "We need to examine her medical files and speak with anyone who had close contact with her," an officer said firmly, stepping forward. Tommy's father nodded in agreement, his expression grim. Calls were made, records requested, and the sense of urgency intensified. Everyone understood that even the smallest oversight could mean overlooking a critical piece of the puzzle. The final chilling clue surfaced when evidence pointed to the caretaker woman having tampered with the mother's medications. A forensic expert held up a pill bottle, his voice clear and grave. "It seems these were altered," he said, revealing inconsistencies in the dosage. A collective shudder passed through the room. The woman's face went pale, her eyes brimming with guilt as the weight of the revelation settled over her. Silence fell like a curtain, thick and suffocating, as everyone struggled to comprehend the magnitude of what had just come to light. The tampered medication was now suspected to be the cause of her premature death. These changes in her medication could very well have led to her untimely passing, an officer explained gravely. Tommy's father clenched his fists, his fury simmering just beneath the surface, while the woman's tear-streaked face served as a silent admission of guilt. The confirmation of Tommy's unsettling claim cast a dark, undeniable truth over the mystery of his mother's death, igniting a renewed demand for answers and accountability from everyone present. The shocking revelations brought the funeral to an abrupt end, but in their wake, a new chapter began, one defined by the pursuit of justice, healing, and the painful uncovering of long-buried family secrets. "We need to seek justice for her," Tommy's father declared, his voice resolute and unwavering. The idea of moving forward without confronting the darkness surrounding her death felt unthinkable. As family and friends struggled to absorb the truth, it became clear that the road ahead would demand both answers and emotional reconciliation, forging a path toward understanding and peace. Filled with a storm of emotions, Tommy's father made a solemn vow to uncover the full truth and seek justice for his late wife. "I won't rest until we know everything," he said, his jaw tight with determination. The room buzzed with a tense blend of resolve and uncertainty, but his promise marked the beginning of a long and necessary journey into the hidden corners of her life and death. United by a shared purpose, the family's determination solidified, setting them on a path toward truth, closure, and healing. The police pressed on with a meticulous investigation, fully aware of the serious nature of the accusations. "We'll leave no stone unturned," the lead detective assured the family as officers conducted interviews with close contacts and combed through extensive medical records. Forensic experts returned to the home, re-examining belongings with renewed focus. The family looked on with a blend of hope and apprehension, knowing each new discovery could inch them closer to the truth while also dreading what that truth might ultimately reveal. The community struggled to cope with the tension and unanswered questions that lingered like a shadow over daily life. "It feels like a bad dream," one neighbor muttered, eyes fixed on their phone as they scrolled through updates. Conversations throughout town were dominated by speculation, with residents sharing theories and voicing concerns. The ripple effects of the investigation extended far beyond the family, disrupting the rhythm of the once close-knit community as everyone tried to grasp the depth and implications of the unfolding mystery. The investigation progressed, family members slowly began to come to terms with the painful revelations, clinging to the hope that truth and closure would eventually follow. "We've got to brace ourselves for whatever comes next," Tommy's Aunt Sarah said, her voice steady with resolve. Together, they leaned on one another for strength, knowing the road ahead would be long and difficult. Tommy's father turned his attention to his son, filled with gratitude for the child's courage in speaking up. Through the heartache, each family member held on to the belief that peace would come one truth at a time. Still clinging to his mother's final words, Tommy found comfort in the knowledge that her story was finally being brought to light. He gently squeezed his father's hand and whispered, "Mama would be proud of us." Though the journey ahead remained uncertain and likely filled with more heartache, the family's commitment to uncovering the truth offered a small but steady sense of peace. It was a bittersweet realization that, through their pain, they were honoring her memory in the most meaningful way by seeking justice and understanding.